We're here. We made it.
Thanks for joining us.
Which is very exciting. When I was listening to what was going on downstairs, the thought that I kept having was, this seems to be a watershed moment for the Lyme community. All sides coming together to discuss ways to push this illness, this disease, this problem forward and actually come to some sort of conclusion. Is that just my perspective from sort of the outside looking in, or does it feel that way from your position?
From my position, I feel like the groups are coming together in a new way we haven't seen before. And there's enough people coming to the table for Lyme innovation that really hoping this will be the Lyme tipping point.
What kind of process did it take to get to this point where you could bring people together, where you could have scientists discussing their own research, where you could have people sharing ideas that then ultimately may produce some sort of positive outcome?
I think some of the process was my own personal journey and 10 years being misdiagnosed, and then the trials to get out, and then vowing if I ever did get out to pay it forward. And then that personal experience, a lived experience, combining with a Stanford PhD in that training, and then just being able to have one foot in both worlds. And then was lucky enough to land in government at the Science Policy Interface. And I think a lot of people recognize from all sides, the patient community, the science community, and the policy and government, that something needs to change and that this is important, and working together will bring about that change fastest. So I don't think it was an accident or a quick fix. I think it was decades in the making, and all the patients for many, many years saying this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, finally is at the surface.
When most people get diagnosed with a life-altering illness, as Lyme is, the question that they ask is, why me? It seems perhaps your answer might be simple. Is this it?
I suppose. I mean, I was trained as a systems biologist and ecologist, and I look forward to the day where Lyme is cured and I can go back to oceans and fish.
And do you think that day is on the horizon?
I think it'll be a long time coming because it's such a complex disease. But I think improvement is on the horizon. I think alleviating suffering and all the stories like mine of people getting well, returning to work, and having productive lives is more and more common. And we're finding out what's working. And as people are sharing data, sharing in science, hopefully we'll be able to turn that into more available treatment, effective treatment for everyone.
The catch here seems to be funding. Actually getting money behind this issue so that you can continue the research, the work, to continue to make some progress. When I was looking at some of the numbers, especially compared to other horrific illnesses like HIV and the like, Lyme is just way at the bottom. I mean, you guys are getting nothing. How do we change that?
Funding definitely helps, but I think you have to have a strategy behind the funding. You can't just throw money at the problem. And I feel like what we're doing today with the Lyme Innovation Roundtable is getting a lot of diverse perspectives to give input into that strategy so that if and when money does come, we will get out of the gate and we will have big impact.
What is the hope at the end of today? Is it to have a blueprint going forward? Is it just to come to some sort of consensus? What do you hope to be able to sort of hold on to at the end of this?
Yeah, so the Lyme Innovation Roundtable is really a beginning point. We are going to be getting a lot of diverse perspectives, a lot of individual perspectives that will help inform emerging public-private partnerships. So really have two goals. One is, can our office of the HHS CTO collaborate with philanthropists and nonprofits who have come to the table today to really scale Lyme innovation, put money behind it, put strategy behind it, put resources from all sectors. The other one is really about data interoperability, and we're going to move much faster and come to solutions much faster if institutions are collecting data in one shared way and we're able to scale that data across multiple places to find complex patterns that otherwise, if data was in individual institutions or siloed, we would not be able to see. So that kind of science interoperability, data interoperability, the sharing of science in a responsible way, I think is kind of the backbone of how we will find solutions. And then again, that's bringing a lot of diverse people together.
What's your biggest obstacle here?
Biggest obstacle?
Besides perhaps the obvious, which is making people really believe that this is as big of a problem as it is.
I think one of the big challenges is that there's so much history in Lyme and so much controversy, and people see this as such a politicized idea or politicized issue that many scientists and many researchers choose not to get involved. And so we're missing a lot of great people who could help us move the conversation forward. So one of the biggest obstacles, I think, is how to constructively engage and how to bring all these diverse opinions together in a way where we're harnessing the wisdom of the crowd and moving forward beyond just us versus them, or the blaming. One of my favorite sayings is it's hard to roll up your sleeves and throw rocks at the same time. And we're looking for people who roll up their sleeves and get in the trenches with us rather than just throwing rocks. We know it's not perfect. We know there's a long way to go, but rolling up our sleeves and at least starting somewhere, I think, is the most important thing. At least we're on the playing field, and hopefully we won't hit too many landmines.
Is this a generational issue? Are you finding younger scientists are perhaps more willing to jump in on the fight because maybe they're growing up with more of an understanding of Lyme versus an older population that maybe is just starting to hear about this or has lived for a long time, not giving this issue a lot of weight?
I don't think we're there yet. I think the new generation will come about as medical curricula are updated, as science training is done differently. Right now, speaking, as a scientist, it would be irresponsible for me to encourage the next generation to go into this field, because to get tenure, you really need to get the prestigious multi-year NIH R1 grants, and those are really hard to get, and very few are available for Lyme. So you really want to go where the momentum is, and often in science, the momentum is where the funding is. So we're not building up the next generation because the funding isn't there for them yet, and if they really want to have a career in science and medicine, they have to go where there's momentum, funding, and support for their career.
Is there more momentum, more funding, more research in other tick-borne diseases outside of Lyme? Is that another pathway in?
Yes, there's people who study rickettsia, all these different diseases, although funding there is also limited. So there are many pathways in, and I encourage people to get creative. I came to this issue as a systems biologist, as an ecologist, so people could come to Lyme disease from entomology, or even big data informatics and computer science. In the systems approach, it doesn't matter what topic you're looking at, whether it's bacteria like Lyme disease or fish in oceans. So I think there are a lot of creative ways people could come at this disease where there might be alternative funding sources. And one example of that is My Lyme Data, the patient registry. They got a grant from NSF for big data. So it wasn't necessarily a Lyme grant, but it was through a different avenue to look at this issue.
So just quickly, outside of the Lyme Innovation Roundtable, I do know that there is other work being done on other kinds of tick-borne illnesses. Can you just briefly talk about the working group, or what inroads are being made in that regard, and how that potentially could help push the whole issue forward?
Sure. So the working group was formed with the 21st Century Cures Act, passed in 2016. It was stood up in 2017, and we have existed for little less than a year. I've served as vice chair, and we just a few weeks ago published our first ever report. And this 2018 report has 28 different recommendations. Those recommendations go to Congress, and they go to the HHS secretary. And they cover a variety of things in there, including that it's not only Lyme disease. Even though Lyme is over 80% of the cases that we see in the United States, there are many other tick-borne illnesses and many other pathogens we have to be paying attention to.
So last question for you. To the congressman or the senator who is watching at home, who's thinking, oh, I heard something about this whole Lyme innovation and this working group. What do you, as a member of the government, say to them in order to impress upon them the importance of this issue? How do we essentially sell this to our representatives so that they see exactly how much this is needed?
I would say to the representatives that I should not be the one selling it. Would say to the representatives to listen to the constituents. There's wisdom in the patients, there's wisdom in the community, and if they listen to their constituents, I think they will understand the importance of this and hopefully be set in a good direction as we in the executive branch are more and more prioritizing Lyme and tick-borne diseases. Hopefully other branches of government will do the same.
They don't have to look very far. That seems to be the case, right?
Yes.
Yes. By your own data, it is everywhere.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to add? Anything that we didn't touch upon? That's important.
Just that all the work we do is really driven by the community and the patient need. And we're trying to be responsive, particularly with Lyme innovation, to have a two-way dialogue. So what the community out there is asking for and what they need, they're in the trenches, they know the pain points most, and we want to set up an ability to listen and learn from that, and then hopefully respond to the greatest needs as soon as possible. So I just thank everyone who is sending emails, who is participating in the Lyme Innovation Roundtable and other events that we have for being part of the conversation.
I bet it's going to be really interesting for the person that's sitting at home battling Lyme to hear that all this is happening. Like, a lot of people tell me that they never thought that there would come a day where they would see sort of a meeting of the minds in this regard, that it would actually that it would be recognized in this regard.
Yeah. So. And together we'll turn Lyme innovation into the Lyme tipping point.